Imagine waking up every day knowing that no matter how hard you try, your life is still a mess. You work, study, and many become doctors. And that is of no use. And at the end of the month, the only thing guaranteed is always the same question hammering in your head. How do I get out of here? In Cuba, this is not drama. It's routine. Millions have already left. Millions are trying. Not for adventure, but because staying started to seem more dangerous than fleeing. An ordinary Cuban can take almost 9 years without spending a cent, just to save enough money to try to leave the country. Not even to live abroad, just to leave. And then I started thinking, what makes someone sell their own house, go into debt, cross jungle, desert, sea, just to leave? Today I will show you when an entire country stops planning for the future and starts planning to escape. And after understanding this, it's impossible not to ask yourself, if I had been born here, what would I do? 1. Why does everyone want to escape? After walking around Cuba for a few days, something really started to bother me. Here, no one talks about the future, and it's not a figure of speech. It's literal. You talk to people, and no one asks, what do you want to be? The question is always another, much more direct and much more honest. Have you thought about leaving? Is there someone outside? Are you saving money? In Cuba, leaving the country is not an ambition. It's a table topic, like the price of rice or power outages. And when you start looking at the numbers, everything makes sense, in the most wrong way possible. The average state salary is around $25 per month. You see, 25. That's not a salary. It's an insult with a signed contract. Now answer me honestly. What kind of life can you build with that? Because the food here doesn't have socialist prices. No, it has prices like a normal country. Rice, oil, tomatoes, meat, everything costs as if you earned in dollars. Spoiler, you don't. According to local data, more than 70% of the average Cuban's monthly income goes just to food. And even so, it's not enough. In other words, you work the whole month to eat poorly. Meat becomes an event. Oil becomes a treasure. Planning the month turns into science fiction. Meanwhile, inflation easily surpassed 70% per year, and the salary just stood there watching the disaster unfold. I heard from an engineer a phrase that explains Cuba better than any economic thesis. I studied for 5 years to earn less than my neighbor, who receives money from her foreign boyfriend living in the United States. There, the debate is over. Here, no one dreams of getting rich. That dream is already dead. The dream now is different, much more humble and much sadder. Not to depend on money from abroad, not to need to ask for help, not to count coins to decide whether to eat today or tomorrow. That's why leaving becomes an obsession. And it's not just a guess. More than 2 million Cubans have already left a country with just over 11 million inhabitants. Translating, almost 1 in every 5 has left. And those who stayed are thinking about it. You see young people wanting to leave, adults wanting to leave, educated people, simple people, people who never thought about emigrating, everyone looking in the same direction. And it's not because Cuba is no good, it's because the effort stopped paying off. You work, 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 and remain in the same place, or worse. When studying doesn't change your life, when working doesn't change your future, when tomorrow seems like a cursed replay of yesterday, staying stops being a choice, it becomes resistance. And then the question changes. It's no longer where am I going? It's another, much heavier one. How do I get out of here? And when an entire country starts thinking like this, it's not drama, it's a flashing warning. And it's exactly here that this story starts to get really heavy. 2. Why is leaving so difficult? After understanding why everyone wants to leave, comes the second blow of reality. Wanting to leave is one thing, being able to leave is something completely different. Because in Cuba, freedom of movement is not a boring bureaucratic detail, it's a structural obstacle designed to wear you out before you even try. The Cuban passport is among the weakest in the world. It grants visa-free access to fewer than 60 territories, and let's be honest, most are not exactly anyone's dream destination. When you ask a Cuban where they want to go, the names repeat like a mantra. United States, Spain, Italy, Mexico. Now guess what? None of them make it easy at all. Everything requires a visa. Everything requires money. Everything requires time. And the Cuban already arrives at the interview with an invisible stamp on their forehead, possible illegal immigrant. The refusal rate is high, and often the no comes without any explanation, just to remind you where you were born. Now let me ask you a simple question. How does someone save money to travel earning $25 a month? They don't. Or do they save by giving up living? To give you an idea of the absurdity, just the cost of fees, documents, and translations for a visa can easily exceed $500 or even $1,000. That amounts to years of state salary. Even before traveling, the person is already broke. For an ordinary Cuban, leaving the country is not a trip, not a vacation. It's a long-term mission. A mission that almost always depends on someone from outside. A relative, a friend, a contact, someone who has already managed to leave before. Without that, the doors simply do not open. It's not a lack of will, it's a lack of a key. And even when there is help, nothing is simple. Fees, lines, months of waiting, documents that expire, rules that change out of nowhere. Some people spend years trying and get nowhere. Each no received pushes the person a little further towards a dangerous question that starts to appear in their mind almost without asking permission. And what if it's not through the legal way? This is where the story starts to change tone, because when the system closes all the doors, people start looking for windows, and the problem is that many of these windows lead straight into the abyss. 3. The impossible account. After understanding that leaving is difficult, I went after the question that really matters. How much does it cost to leave Cuba? And not in a pretty theory, no. In practice. That's when it really hit home, and it hit hard. Let's start with the basics. The average state salary is around $25 per month. 25. That is not a salary. It is a test of psychological endurance. Now answer me honestly. If you earned that, how long would it take you to save money to travel? Right, let's pretend, just pretend, because this is already science fiction, that someone can save 100% of their salary. No eating, no paying for electricity, no transportation, no living. Even so, to save $2,000, which is the minimum amount to try some legal path, this person would take almost 9 years. 9. Working without spending a cent. Now comes the question that dismantles everything. How does someone live for 9 years without spending their own salary? They don't. That's where the calculation breaks down, because this math wasn't made to add up. It was made to tire, to grind, to make the person give up before the finish line. In real life, what happens is something else. People sell what they have: house, car, refrigerator, stove, and along with that, they sell memories. Others go heavily into debt. They borrow money from family who have already left. They promise to pay back later if they make it, and even so, the amount rises quickly. Passage, documents, fees, translations, hidden costs, those details that nobody tells you, but everyone pays. Each stage costs more than the previous one. It's a broken escalator. You go up, but it pulls you down at the same time. To give you a real sense, depending on the route, the total cost to leave Cuba can easily reach $8,000 or even $10,000. Do the math. That amounts to more than 30 years of state salary. 30 years working just to buy a chance. That's why I say, without any exaggeration, leaving Cuba is not expensive, it's prohibitive. And the more time passes, the more expensive it gets. Because the salary doesn't increase, but the cost of leaving goes up every month. Inflation runs, the dream stands still, and then you start to understand why so many people accept absurd risks. It's not courage, it's calculated desperation. When the math doesn't add up through normal means, the brain starts to accept paths that once seemed crazy. Paths you would never choose if you had an option. Because in the end, the question stops being, how much does it cost to leave? And turns into a much heavier one, how much does it cost to stay? And the answer for many people is too simple to ignore. 4. The legal routes. After realizing that the numbers don't add up, I started looking for those who managed to leave Cuba without fleeing. And the answer came quickly, almost embarrassingly, almost no one. It is not impossible to leave legally, but it is rare, slow, and most of the time, it only works for those who already have someone on the outside pulling the door. The first possibility everyone mentions is family reunification. If you have a father, mother, child, or spouse legally living abroad, there is a chance. It is not big, it is not fast, and it is not easy, but it exists. The problem is that this process often turns into a limbo. The person spends years waiting for a response that never comes, living with a Cuban salary, Cuban inflation, and Cuban anxiety, and then comes the part that nobody likes to hear. Most simply don't have anyone outside. For these people, this route dies before it is born. Then I went to look at study and work visas. On paper, it seems fair. In practice, it's a cruel funnel. The Cuban is not evaluated only by the resume, the diploma, or the invitation. They are evaluated by the invisible question that no one says out loud. Will this person return? And when the implicit answer is, probably not, the visa dies right there. It doesn't matter if you are qualified. The weight of the country speaks louder than individual effort. Then comes the most delicate route of all, marriage. And here I will speak as an adult, without romanticizing or demonizing. Yes, love exists. Yes, real stories exist. But there is also strategy. When leaving the country becomes a matter of survival, the relationship stops being just about feelings and becomes a possibility. And this is where the term that many people use incorrectly appears, gineterismo. Many people think this is just women selling their bodies. It is not. In practice, it is often a relationship for interest, strategic affection, companionship with a goal. It's not always direct money. Sometimes it's a promise, help, future, a way out. And no, this doesn't define all Cuban women, far from it. But pretending this phenomenon doesn't exist is closing your eyes to reality. And even when it turns into marriage, nothing is quick, nothing is guaranteed. It takes years of process, interviews, evidence, suspicions. Legal here does not mean easy. It just means less dangerous than escaping through the woods or by sea. After looking at all this, one thing became clear to me. Legal routes do not fail due to lack of will. They fail because they require things that the average Cuban does not control. Infinite time, international trust, and someone outside willing to help. It's not laziness, it's lack of permission. And when you try everything legal, wait as long as possible, and remain exactly in the same place, the question changes tone. It's no longer, which path do I choose? It's, what do I do now? That's when many people start looking at routes that don't appear on any form. Paths that have no interview, no stamp, and no guarantee. Only risk. And it is exactly here that this story stops being bureaucratic and starts becoming an escape. 5. The semi-legal routes. When the legal doors don't open, I realized something simple. The Cuban doesn't stop, he looks for loopholes. That's where the so-called semi-legal routes come in. Semi-legal because on paper, everything is fine. But, in practice, the escape started a long time ago. It works like this. The person gets a tourist, event, or competition visa for a country that is not the final destination. Not because they want to sightsee, take photos, or learn about the local culture, but because it's the only way to leave the island. Russia, Panama, Guyana. For a while, these doors stayed open. Everyone knew exactly why. And this doesn't happen only with anonymous people. It happens with artists and elite athletes, people who, theoretically, succeeded within the system. In Cuban boxing, this has become almost standard. Cuba has always been an Olympic powerhouse, with medals, anthem playing, and official speeches of national pride. But what few people mention is that these athletes gained prestige, not freedom. The money was controlled, the career had a ceiling, and the future outside of sports was an unknown. In 2007, the two-time Olympic champion Guillermo Rigondeaux, considered one of the most talented boxers of his generation, defected during the Pan American Games in Rio de Janeiro. He had already tried to leave before in 2004 in Greece and was captured and punished. In Rio, when he had the chance again, he simply did not return. He knew that was probably the last window. In 2009, Erislandy Lara, amateur world champion and a huge promise of Cuban boxing, defected during an international tournament in Guatemala. Lara was not an unknown. He was treated as a future Olympic medalist. Even so, he preferred to disappear in the middle of the trip rather than remain trapped in a system that controlled how far he could go. In 2010, Yordenis Ugas, who would later become a professional world champion, defected after a competition in Panama. Ugas left knowing he would lose status, support, and state protection, but he also knew that by staying, he would never control his own career or his own money. All of them traveled legally, with a uniform, credential, and flag on their chest, official representatives of the state, and they all made the same decision, to stay. From then on, the title changed quickly. From sports hero to irregular migrant, and there was no glamour at all. Many spent months hiding, without documents, unable to work legally, sleeping on a friend's couch, living on charity, waiting for an opportunity not to be deported. A medal does not pay for a lawyer. An anthem does not guarantee a visa. That's when I asked myself the question that dismantles any romantic narrative. If even a champion athlete with an Olympic medal prefers to flee, what is left for the ordinary Cuban? These routes seem safer at the beginning. There is no sea, no raft, no expired life jacket. But the risk does not disappear, it just changes form. And when many people start using the same loophole, the pattern repeats. The country closes. Escort, surveillance, control begin. The route works until it stops working. When that happens, the path gets uglier. That's when the coyotes, the improvised rafts, and the sea come in. Before the visa, before the competition, before any loophole, the Cuban already knew one path: the sea. And let me be direct. The sea was never plan B. It was always the last resort. No one gets on an improvised raft out of courage. They do it out of desperation. For decades, Cubans tried to leave on rafts made of doors, barrels, styrofoam, plastic, reused engines. When there was an engine, often without a life jacket, sometimes with nothing. In 1994, during the raft crisis, more than 35,000 Cubans tried to leave like this in a few months. Many arrived, many disappeared. And no one knows how many were lost along the way, because the sea does not give receipts. The problem is that the sea does not negotiate, does not accept promises, does not forgive mistakes. A change in the wind, a failing engine, a wrong wave, and it's over. Even so, this route never completely disappeared. She just stays quiet, waiting for the despair to rise again. When other doors close, the sea seems like an option again. And the heaviest part is realizing that these stories have stopped shocking. They've become comparisons. So-and-so tried and made it. Such and such tried and died. As if it were statistics. These routes, semi-legal or completely illegal, give a false sense of control, but they are just steps outside the system. And once you take that step, there is no easy way back. That's why when any new door opens, even if it's expensive, dangerous, or absurd, everyone rushes. It was like that with the visas. It was like that with the athletes. It was like that with the sea. And it was exactly like that when a word began to circulate throughout the entire island as a whisper of hope. Go through Nicaragua. 6. Nicaragua. The emergency exit. At the end of 2021, something changed everything. Nicaragua announced that Cubans would no longer need a visa to enter the country. And I am not exaggerating when I say that this hit Cuba like a fire alarm. It was not seen as tourism, nor as a cultural opportunity. It was seen as an exit. Overnight, Nicaragua became the island's emergency exit. The one you only break the glass for when you've tried everything and have no other option. The reaction was immediate. Flights from Havana to Managua simply disappeared. And when they appeared, they came with a robbery price. $3,000, $4,000 just for the ticket. Then comes the question that no one answers easily. Someone who earns $25 a month, where do they get this money from? From the family that has already left, from a loan, from selling the house, the car. Of everything the person built their entire life, it was that or stay. But reaching Nicaragua did not mean freedom. It meant starting the crossing. From there, the path was overland. Nicaragua, Honduras, Guatemala, Mexico, United States. One country at a time, one border at a time, always with someone charging to help. Coyotes, smugglers, improvised groups. And each stage cost more money and more risk. Violence, extortion, imprisonment, deportation. Some people are stuck for months along the way, without money, without valid documents, unable to work legally. And even so, they continue, because going back is not an option. According to official data from the United States, almost 180,000 Cubans entered the country through this route in a single year. This is not a normal migratory flow. It is an entire city walking on foot. And what is most impressive is not the number. It is the determination. People crossing the jungle, sleeping on the ground, eating poorly, carrying children in their arms. All this not to live the American dream, but simply to leave Cuba. When I heard these accounts, it became clear to me, this is not ordinary immigration, this is an exodus. And when a country reaches this point, it's not because people want adventure. It's because staying seems more dangerous than leaving. And even with all that, Nicaragua still seemed less risky than the oldest route of all. The sea. I was told so many heavy stories about escapes by sea that I couldn't tell them here. My video would easily get taken down. If you were born in Cuba, what would you do to leave? And don't say you'd find an old foreigner, okay? Becoming a gigolo and giving up your valuable behind is too low. If you made it this far, comment, escape, and take the opportunity to click on the video about Cuba that's appearing on the screen. Thanks and see you next time.